Welcome back, dreamer. Tonight, we will be exploring the whispering mountains of the moon, where your body softens, your spirit listens, and your astral path begins to open. In this moment, sleep is more than rest. It is an astral passage beyond the veil. Before you get into your bed and relax, feel free to like the video and subscribe for future astral sleep journeys. Have you ever felt your feet touch the dust of another world? A world where the sky above carries no sun, no stars, but only the soft glow of a moon so massive and close that it feels like it's breathing. Because that's what greets you now as you begin your descent into the Moon Valley. You find yourself standing at the edge of a high silver ridge. Beneath your feet, the surface shimmers faintly like powdered crystal, cold but not unwelcoming. And ahead of you, the valley opens wide, barren, yes, but not empty. The terrain dips gradually into a field of pale gray slopes, twisted stone arches, and flickering lights that move without shadows. You begin to walk, your steps quiet, almost floating, as if the air around you has its own rhythm. Gravity feels different here, not lighter or heavier, but slower, as if time itself respects the silence of this place. Each step you take sends a faint pulse through the dust. Not a sound, not a vibration, but something softer, like a whisper traveling through stone. And you realize that the valley itself is aware of your presence, responding to your movement with a kind of invisible acknowledgement. The path curves downward, winding between jagged rocks that rise like ancient bones from beneath the moon-soaked ground. Some of them are marked, etched with spiral symbols, deep and glowing faintly blue as you pass by. You can't read them, but something in you understands their purpose. These are the boundary markers, warnings, or perhaps blessings, left by the first travelers who once walked these same quiet slopes. As you move deeper into the valley, a strange sound begins to rise. Though sound may not be the right word, it's more like a thought carried on wind, a low, layered hum, made not by any machine or creature, but by the very rocks themselves. They whisper not with voices, but with memory. You pause beside one of the larger stone formations, shaped like a crescent claw reaching toward the sky. As you place your hand upon its cool surface, an image flashes through your mind, not from you, but given to you. A vision of a figure walking this same valley long ago, their shape blurred in the moonlight, their steps deliberate, their heart open. You pull your hand away, not out of fear, but reverence, and continue walking. A narrow path appears, carved into the side of a gentle cliff that slopes toward a deeper basin within the valley. The dust here grows lighter in color. Soft lavender and gray tones blend beneath your feet like the breath of twilight. And ahead, nestled between two curved ridges, you see something stirring. At first, it looks like mist, drifting low and slow, moving without wind. But as you approach, the mist lifts slightly, revealing a group of figures, tall, translucent, and still. They do not move, they do not speak, but they are watching. You stop a safe distance away, not out of fear, but instinct. And the moment you do, the figures shimmer faintly, not glowing, but pulsing. Their form ripples slightly like heat above a flame, and one of them begins to drift forward. It doesn't walk, but glides over the surface of the valley floor. And when it nears you, you feel not words, but sensation pressing gently against your chest. It's offering you something, not a command, not a message, but a question. You don't speak aloud. There's no need. Instead, you lower your gaze respectfully, and as you do, the figure stops, and then it bows. The others begin to shimmer more brightly, the mist rising around them again, until they are once more hidden behind veils of light. You take a breath, slow and steady, and step forward again. The path descends further now, curving left into a narrow stone passage, lit only by the reflection of the moonlight against crystalline walls. And as you walk, you realize you are not entering darkness. You are entering the deeper voice of this mountain, a place where the whispers grow stronger, where presence becomes dialogue, and where silence speaks. Have you ever walked through a place where the wind moves not to be heard, but to be known? Where every current of air that brushes your skin carries meaning instead of sound, and silence becomes more alive than speech. You continue your descent through the stone corridor, carved into the bones of the Moon Valley. The pale lavender dust clinging faintly to your steps as you pass between walls of translucent rock that catch and stretch the moonlight in long ribbons of shimmer. The air shifts. It's subtle at first, a coolness against your cheek, a light resistance brushing past your shoulders, as though the space around you is breathing. But then you notice something unsettling. There is no sound, not even the faint hiss of wind against stone, not the quiet crunch of dust beneath your feet. Nothing. It is not the kind of silence you find in still places. It is deeper, almost deliberate, as though the air itself is swallowing noise before it can be born. You pause for a moment, standing perfectly still, hoping to catch some trace of sound in the distance. A distant whisper, a falling pebble, the echo of your breath. But the stillness presses tighter, like a soft hand held firmly over the ears of the world. You begin to move again, more slowly now, each step measured not by sound, but by sensation. The corridor widens into a new section of the valley, a wide open slope layered with strange spiraling ridges etched into the ground like the fingerprints of an ancient presence. They curve inward toward a central hollow, and above it, the air churns in slow spirals of invisible motion. The wind is moving. You can feel it on your skin, sliding across your arms, pulling gently at your clothing, curling softly around your legs like an unseen current, but you cannot hear it. It passes through the valley in complete silence, and the effect is eerie, mesmerizing, as though nature itself is holding its breath. You crouch beside one of the spiral etchings, running your fingers through the powdery dust. And as you do, you feel something change in the air, not in temperature, but in intention. It feels as though the wind has noticed you, not with eyes, not with mind, but with presence. There is a subtle pressure against your chest, gentle but purposeful, like an unspoken question being asked by the valley itself. You rise slowly, and without knowing why, you begin to walk toward the center of the spiral hollow. The further in you move, the heavier the silence becomes, not oppressive, but dense, like the quiet between heartbeats when the world seems to pause for just 1 second too long. And then, without warning, the wind stops moving entirely. The air becomes perfectly still, and in that stillness, a figure appears at the far edge of the hollow. At first, you can't tell if it's real. It seems to shimmer in and out of form, almost like it's being carved from the air itself. Long limbs, draped in flowing strands of soft, silvery light. No face, no eyes, just presence. It doesn't approach, it doesn't speak, it simply exists, standing within the motionless wind, watching. You raise your hand, not as a wave, not as a greeting, but as an offering. And for a brief moment, the figure flickers brighter, then fades, dissolving into the atmosphere as though it was never there at all. And yet, you feel its residue in the space it left behind, an emotional echo, a vibration of thought that has no voice. Something was communicated, something understood, but not in language, only in presence. You stay in that hollow for a few more minutes, letting the wind return slowly, letting the air move around you once again, like invisible threads reconnecting the fabric of the valley. You don't speak, you don't move quickly, you only breathe, because now you understand something about this place. In the whispering mountains of the moon, silence is not empty. It is filled with things too vast for sound, too sacred for speech, and too close for language. Have you ever stepped across a land so ancient that even the dust remembers you? Where every grain beneath your feet holds a memory, a vibration, a whisper from something long before you arrived. As you leave the silent spiral hollow behind, your steps carry you down a wide, shallow descent where the terrain begins to shift once more, not in shape, but in substance. The solid stone underfoot gives way to a layer of dust that glows with a faint silver hue, like powdered starlight settled over the bones of forgotten time. You pause to look down, and for the first time, you notice something strange about the ground beneath you. It moves, not like sand blowing in wind, but like thought responding to emotion, as if every step you take causes the dust to respond, swirling faintly outward in perfect ripples, not with force, but with curiosity. You crouch slowly, pressing your hand against the surface. The grains are soft, cool, and light, yet when your palm lifts, they cling faintly to your skin, not like earth, but like memory. Tiny sparks of light shimmer between your fingers, and then fade, not into the air, but into you. You realize this dust is not just the erosion of rock or mineral. It is composed of something more subtle, more sacred. It is old thought, old feeling, the residue of thousands of quiet journeys once made through this same valley, each leaving behind traces of awareness, like footprints pressed into the soul of the land itself. As you stand, your footsteps grow slower, more intentional. With each stride, you begin to feel not just the ground, but the energy it holds. When you step forward with calm, the dust moves smoothly, gently, like water touched by moonlight. When you hesitate, it darkens slightly, swirls tighter around your ankles as though urging you forward. And when you pause completely, the dust rests with you, still, patient, listening. It is not guiding you, but responding to you. A silent dialogue begins to form, not with words, not even with images, but with motion and light. You step to your right, and the dust contracts slightly. You breathe deeply and take 2 careful steps forward, and it expands into slow spirals beneath your path. You begin to understand this valley does not simply exist, it remembers, and you are not a stranger walking through it. You are a story being added to it. In the distance, a low slope curves into view, dust pouring slowly down its edge like a silver waterfall slowed to a crawl. At its base, smooth stones half buried in the glowing layer mark what seems to be an ancient trail, some forgotten passage carved not with tools, but with intention. You follow the path, feeling each footstep not only press into the surface, but echo faintly into your chest, like a bell rung in a distant temple, whose tone vibrates through spirit instead of air. As you walk, you begin to see faint shapes etched into the dust itself, symbols formed not by any hand, but by the behavior of the dust as it shifts around invisible structures just beneath the surface. Some of the symbols match the spirals you saw earlier. Others are more fluid, curves and waves that feel like expressions rather than language. And the strangest part is that they change depending on where you look from. When seen from the left, one formation resembles a spiral. From the right, it becomes a wave. From above, it disappears entirely. You stop walking for a moment, letting the stillness settle, and close your eyes. There, in the silence, you feel something beneath your feet, not solid, not sharp, but alive, a kind of awareness, soft and old, stretching deep into the layers below. You kneel once more, placing both hands into the dust this time, letting it gather in your palms like water in a sacred basin. And when you open your eyes again, you see something new, your footprints, each one glowing faintly, holding the shape of your motion, not as a mark of weight, but as a memory recorded, a trail of presence, a record of being. You stand slowly, looking back at the path you've created, not for direction, but for recognition. And in that moment, you realize you are not just walking across the valley, you are writing something into it. With each step, each breath, each emotion you carry, you are inscribing a memory into the moon. Have you ever felt the weight of a gaze not made by eyes, but by presence etched into the very skin of a mountain? A gaze that sees not your form, but your intention, your motion, your memory. As you move deeper into the valley, where the silver dust grows thinner and the terrain tilts upward into fractured cliffs of moon-colored stone, the silence thickens, not in absence of sound, but in the density of awareness that surrounds you like an invisible wall. You step with caution now, not because the path is treacherous, but because something about this stretch of the land demands it. A reverence, a slowing of thought, as if the space itself expects you to walk not as a visitor, but as someone entering sacred ground. And then you see them. At first, they appear as shadows among the ridges, patterns of light and crack, seeming to shift slightly as you pass, forming shapes that vanish as soon as your eyes adjust. But then one of them catches you at just the right angle, and it stays. Carved into the face of the mountain, towering 3 times your height, is the unmistakable image of a face. Not decorative, not symbolic, but deeply expressive, as if captured in the middle of silent thought. The eyes are closed, the mouth is neutral, but the weight of it presses against you like a great hush, rising from beneath the ground. You stop walking, unable not to, and as you look at it, you begin to feel something stir within your chest. Not fear, but a quiet realization that you are not alone, not in the ordinary sense, but in a way that reaches past language and into the root of instinct. You take a step forward, and as you do, the light shifts slightly across the stone surface. The face does not move, but something behind it does. You can't see it, you can't hear it, but you feel it, like the tightening of a thought right before it forms, the sharp pause before a word is chosen. It's not watching you now. It was already watching long before you arrived. You move slowly along the ridge, and more faces begin to appear, embedded in the walls around you. some nearly erased by time, worn smooth by ages of stardust and silence, others sharp and intact, each bearing a unique expression, some peaceful, some stern, some filled with a kind of sorrow so deep it presses against your own chest, as if to remind you of a pain you forgot you had, and still not a single one opens its eyes. You wonder whether they sleep or whether this is their waking state, still, silent, ever seeing. You reach a plateau surrounded by 5 of these faces, one in each direction, including the path you just came from. And standing in the center, you feel as though you've entered a chamber without walls. The wind is absent here. The dust does not rise. Only the slow, steady pulse of your own breath remains. You sit down in the center without fully deciding to. It feels appropriate, necessary even. And for a while, you do nothing but listen, not for sound, but for intention. And slowly, faintly, you feel it, not words, not images, but a knowing, a quiet, shared recognition from the stone itself. It's as if these faces do not exist to intimidate or instruct, but to remember, to witness, to hold the stories of those who passed before you, those who stopped here as you do now, those who felt the weight of being seen without judgment and carried that memory back with them into waking life. One face in particular draws your attention, the one facing the far eastern ridge. Its mouth is parted ever so slightly, unlike the others, as though it once tried to speak, and you find yourself drawn to it, rising slowly and walking toward it with a calm that surprises you. You place your hand against its weathered chin, and for a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, the stone grows warm beneath your fingers, not hot, not burning, just warm enough to tell you that you are felt, that your presence is recorded, that you are not just passing through this place, you are becoming part of it. You lower your hand, bow your head slightly, and as you turn to continue walking, you feel the eyes of every stone face remain closed, but the space behind them remains awake. Have you ever found yourself between 2 ancient walls of silence, where echoes rise not from sound, but from thought, and where each step you take feels as though the land is answering back, not with noise, but with memory? The plateau slowly narrows into a passage between 2 steep ridges, the kind that seem to have formed not by erosion, but by intention, as if the very moon had split here to make space for something to move through. You walk carefully, the silver dust now replaced by smooth, pale stone that gleams under the overhead moonlight like polished bone. The path ahead dips slightly and curves in unnatural angles. There is no logic to the terrain here, only flow. And between the tall, looming faces of the mountains, the air begins to shift. Not in wind, not in light, but in texture. There's a pressure, subtle but undeniable, like a soft hand pressing lightly against your chest, reminding you to breathe slower, to feel deeper. And then you notice the echoes. They do not arrive suddenly. They creep in like mist in the mind. It begins with the faint repetition of your footsteps, but not through sound. You step forward, and a second later, you feel that same movement reflected back at you, like the sensation of walking being mirrored in space. It's as if the valley is watching the way you move and responding, not by mimicking, but by acknowledging. You pause mid-step, holding your breath, and the echo doesn't stop. Instead, it begins to hum gently beneath your ribs, a kind of resonance that grows louder, not in your ears, but in your thoughts. You take another step, slower this time, and again feel the echo, this time accompanied by a flicker of imagery that flashes in the back of your mind. Yourself, walking through this same passage, but from above, or perhaps from before. It's unclear whether these echoes are reflections of your current presence, or memories left behind from past visits, or something far older trying to overlap itself with your journey. As you move forward, the echoes multiply. They ripple from the stone walls and press into your senses like invisible waves, each step becoming a question, each pause becoming an answer. You reach out toward the closest ridge, placing your hand flat against its surface, and it responds. You don't feel vibration or warmth. You feel presence, a slow, deep recognition, as though the mountain remembers the shape of every hand that ever touched it, and now adds yours to the memory. You step away, and the air between the peaks thickens again, and then a whisper passes through you, not in sound but in emotion, a sudden swell of nostalgia, sharp and fleeting, followed by the calm hush of something that feels like grief, gently letting go. You stop walking and close your eyes. The echoes don't stop. They continue moving through you, brushing past your awareness like pages turning in a book you didn't know you were holding. You feel questions rise within you, questions you can't quite form into words. Who built this valley? Who walks it still? What remains hidden in these walls that answer without language? You open your eyes again and find that you're standing at the center of a wide open basin. The walls of the peaks curving far overhead like two arms reaching toward each other, never quite touching. And here the echoes change. They become layered, multiple pulses of awareness, like overlapping thoughts from different times, different voices, different versions of this same place. You take a slow step forward and the ground beneath you responds, not with tremor, but with clarity. Your thoughts grow sharper, your breath steadier, your sense of direction suddenly more rooted, as if the valley has stopped testing you and started guiding you. You begin to understand that this echo chamber is not meant to confuse. It is meant to remind, to strip away the surface noise of who you think you are, and reflect back the quieter truths you've forgotten to listen for. You remain in the basin for a while longer, walking slowly, listening not with ears, but with stillness. And when you continue your path forward, the echoes do not fade. They follow you, not as sound, but as presence, as company, as proof that the whispering mountains of the moon are not just terrain to pass through. They are memory made stone. Have you ever climbed a staircase not made for height, but for transformation, where each step shifts the rhythm of your breath, the weight of your thoughts, and the way your spirit moves within your body? After leaving the basin of echoes behind, the path begins to rise, but not in a sudden incline, not in any way that feels forced or strenuous. It's a gentle lifting, like being invited upward rather than required to ascend. Ahead of you, carved directly into the stone wall of the mountain, appears a staircase. Simple in form, but impossibly precise. Each step worn smooth by time, yet still sharp at the edges, as though no wind, no dust, no moment has been allowed to erase its shape. You stand at the base for a moment, taking in its structure. There are no railings, no markings, no indication of where it leads, but the air around it moves differently, subtly spiraling upward in slow, steady pulses. And as you inhale, you realize the breath you take in here feels more complete, cooler, clearer, almost weightless. You place your foot on the first step, and as your weight settles onto the stone, something shifts. It's not in your balance, it's in your chest. Your breath deepens without effort, as if your body is no longer pulling in air, but receiving it directly from the space itself. You take another step and then another. With each one, the air seems to stretch and contract gently around you, not resisting your movement, but guiding it. Almost like your breath and the mountain are exhaling in rhythm, moving as one. The higher you climb, the more noticeable it becomes. Not the height, but the stillness. The wind no longer brushes past your skin. The whispers fade behind you. Even the echoes fall silent. It's just you now. And you're breathing. And this stairway, you begin to count your steps, not with numbers, but with sensations. The third step brings warmth to your hands. The fifth makes your vision sharper, more vivid, like the moonlight around you has become more saturated, more alive. The eighth step slows your thoughts, not in a dull way, but in a way that untangles them, like a knot being undone without force. And with each pause, each inhalation, you feel lighter, not because you're leaving something behind, but because you're remembering how little you needed to carry in the first place. Halfway up, the staircase curves around a narrow bend in the rock, revealing a sudden opening in the side of the cliff. A wide ledge where moonlight pours down in a focused column, illuminating the stone in soft gold and pale violet. You pause there, standing in the light, feeling it settle across your shoulders like a robe woven from calm. And you realize something important. This stairway was never meant to carry you to a destination. It is the destination. Each step is an act of alignment. Each breath, a realignment with something inside you that was too long out of rhythm. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the pulse of the place guide your breathing, letting your lungs expand and contract without conscious control. And in that stillness, you feel something whisper, not in your ears, but behind your sternum, a gentle invitation. Keep going. You open your eyes and take the next step, and then another. The staircase narrows again, pressing between two large stone columns that rise like silent guardians carved into the mountain's face. And there, between them, you feel it. Not light, not heat, but awareness. The staircase knows you're here, not as a stranger, but as a part of its rhythm, a necessary breath in its own slow, ancient cycle. You place your foot on the final step, and when you reach the top, the space opens once again, not dramatically, not with grandeur, but with grace. A quiet plateau stretches before you, and in the center sits a single stone bench, low and unadorned, waiting not as a throne, but as a place to breathe. You sit there, not because you're tired, but because you're full of breath, full of stillness, full of a kind of quiet energy that vibrates beneath your skin, like wind waiting to become song. And as you sit, you do not speak, you do not plan, you do not ask what comes next. You simply breathe, and the mountain breathes with you. Have you ever stepped toward a crossing that does not rest upon stone or wood, but instead shimmers into existence through your presence alone? A bridge that vibrates not with weight, but with your willingness to feel. The plateau that unfolds before you after the final stair is quiet, not just in sound, but in intent, as if even the air here has chosen stillness as a form of respect. You walk slowly, feet brushing over a surface so smooth it could be mistaken for glass, though it holds the softness of cooled ash underfoot. And ahead, where the ledge tapers off into the void between two peaks, you see something impossible, a bridge suspended over the chasm, but not built, not constructed. Instead, it pulses. It shimmers faintly with hues of silver, violet, and deep blue, strands of light weaving in and out of one another like threads in a living loom. It doesn't touch the rock on either side. It simply exists, floating between the cliffs as though summoned not by architecture, but by memory. You approach it slowly, feeling the subtle hum in your bones begin to shift. It's not loud, but it's intimate, a vibration that finds the deepest hollow in your chest and presses there gently, like a question whispered without words. You stop at the edge of the platform just before the bridge begins. There is no sign, no gate, no guardian, just the path of energy before you. waiting. You lift one foot and hover it just above the bridge, and in that moment, the air around your leg begins to shimmer. You lower your foot slowly, expecting resistance, but instead, the vibration changes. It deepens, not louder, just fuller, and when the sole of your foot touches the glowing path, the vibration flows up through your leg like warm breath drawn through stone. You take your first step, and the bridge answers not with sound, but with color. A burst of soft golden light trails behind your foot, fading as quickly as it came, like a memory being acknowledged and then released. You take another step, this time a cooler tone, pale indigo, rises briefly, spiraling out in a circle before fading into the stillness of the surrounding space. You realize the bridge is not reacting to your weight. It is responding to your state, your thoughts, your feelings, your presence. Each emotion seems to create a different tone, not musically, but vibrationally. Doubt feels heavy underfoot, causing the strands to flicker more slowly. Calm creates a smooth arc of steady light. Joy causes a brighter spiral that expands wider than the others. You pause halfway across, the chasm yawning silently beneath you. Its depths hidden beneath a slow-moving fog that glows faintly with moonlight. You glance down, and though there is no danger, no tremble, no falter, you feel something stir in your core, not fear, but awe. The realization that this crossing is not just external, it is internal. This is not a bridge of destination, it is a bridge of resonance. You begin to walk again, slower this time, each step a question, each pause an answer. As you move, memories begin to rise, not as images, but as feelings, subtle echoes of moments you had forgotten you carried, a place where you once stood in silence, not knowing what you hoped to hear, a moment of stillness before a choice you didn't know would shape you, a fragment of wonder you once felt as a child, when the world still felt large enough to surprise you. The bridge responds to these too, their resonance more complex, the colors weaving together in layered bands of light that gently surround your path like woven breath. When you reach the other side, the bridge does not vanish. It lingers behind you, still glowing faintly in the dark. But the moment you step onto solid ground, you feel the vibration in your body soften, not disappear, but rest, as if the bridge has accepted your journey, as if it knows you'll carry its frequency forward. You turn to look back once more, not for reassurance, but for acknowledgement. And in that moment, the entire bridge pulses once, gently, fully, in farewell. Then it dims, not gone, just quiet, like a song that knows when to stop. After crossing the vibrating bridge and stepping onto the plateau beyond, you expect the atmosphere to shift with the same gentle motion that has guided you through the valley so far. But instead, you are met with a stillness so complete, it feels as though even the passage of time has decided to pause. The air holds no current, no weight, no hint of motion. Not even the faintest breeze brushes against your skin, and yet it does not feel dead. This windless place is not empty. It is waiting. Ahead, in the center of a wide open expanse of pale stone and silvery dust, stands a tree unlike any you've seen before. Its trunk is smooth and curved, not rough or barked, but layered in soft waves like the surface of moonlit clay. The roots do not dig into the earth below. Instead, they rise into the air, arching and branching outward in slow, deliberate spirals, as though the ground itself has offered them release. There are no leaves, no blossoms, not even branches in the traditional sense. Only extensions that rise like questions held eternally just before they are asked. You approach slowly, each footstep carefully placed, as though walking too quickly might shatter the delicate tension of the moment. The silence deepens with every step, not in volume but in presence, pressing gently against your thoughts, encouraging them to soften, to settle, to listen. When you stand just a few paces from the base of the tree, you realize the silence is not absolute. There is something here, a vibration, barely perceptible, like the faint hum of memory resonating through the soles of your feet and into the cavity of your chest. You reach out a hand, not fully sure why, and let your fingers rest lightly against the surface of the trunk. It's cool to the touch at first, but then shifts, warming slightly, as if recognizing you, not your body, but something quieter, deeper, older. And then the whisper begins. It doesn't come through your ears. It doesn't stir the air. Instead, it moves inside you, like a dream you suddenly remember upon waking, a story you've never heard but somehow know. The tree is not speaking in words, and yet meaning floods you, not as information, but as impression. You feel echoes of ancient things, a long dried river that once ran beneath the roots, the weight of thousands of silent footsteps that passed this way before you, the faint trace of a song once shared beneath moons that no longer shine. You close your eyes, and for a moment, the stillness shifts into something almost musical. Not music and sound, but in sensation, a rhythmic pulse of awareness that wraps itself gently around your ribs and breathes in time with your heart. It doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't seek to be understood. It only shares what it has always been holding, as if to say, "You are welcome here. You have always been welcome here." When you open your eyes again, nothing has changed. And yet, everything feels different. The roots still rise into the air like frozen waves. The dust around your feet remains undisturbed, but now you are part of it. The silence no longer feels empty. It feels shared. You take a step back and bow your head slightly, not because it's expected, but because it feels right. The tree doesn't move, doesn't react. but somehow you know it has accepted your gesture. You've touched something sacred, something that doesn't need to be named to be remembered. As you walk away, the vibration remains faintly within you, not overwhelming, but present, like a thread tied gently around your spine, reminding you with every step that the windless place was never silent. It was only listening. As you leave the windless clearing behind and make your way further into the narrowing passage between the slopes, the terrain begins to shift once again. Not in height or temperature, but in texture. The path begins to tilt slightly upward, and the ground underfoot becomes more solid, composed of dark stone flecked with subtle streaks of violet, as though the mountain has begun revealing the veins beneath its surface. To your right, the mountain wall rises steep and wide, stretching high into the silver sky like an endless sheet of frozen shadow. At first, it appears smooth, polished over eons by time and stillness. But the more you look, the more uncertain you become. Something about its surface seems irregular, subtly asymmetrical, as though the rock is watching you, or rather, as if something behind the rock is watching through it. You take a few cautious steps closer to the wall, and the illusion resolves itself. The stone is not smooth. It is covered in faces, hundreds of them, thousands, carved into the mountain as though the stone had grown them naturally, each one unique, each frozen in a moment of emotion so vivid it pulses through the air like breath. Some are peaceful, eyes closed in soft reflection. Others grimace as if caught in pain that was never allowed to be spoken. A few seem to smile, but not the smile of joy. It is the kind that hides something beneath it, a knowing or a sorrow too complex to name. You move slowly along the base of the wall, letting your hand trail along its surface, feeling the contours of brows, cheekbones, mouths, none identical, yet all strangely familiar. There's no clear order, no pattern to their placement. Some are small, no larger than your palm. Others are massive, their features stretching across entire sections of the wall, as if sculpted by time itself rather than any deliberate hand. As you move deeper into the narrow corridor, a strange sensation begins to form in your chest. At first, it's like déjà vu, brief, flickering recognition that disappears before you can grasp it. But then it sharpens and lingers. You stop suddenly, heart beating slower, breath caught, not out of fear, but from the weight of realization. There is one face just ahead that you recognize, not in the literal sense. You've never seen it in a mirror. No photograph holds this expression, but something about the curve of its jaw, the lines around the eyes, the tilt of its brow, it feels like looking into a version of yourself that belongs to neither past nor future, but somewhere in between. It doesn't move, it doesn't blink, but you feel seen, not judged, not measured, just seen. You step closer and lift a hand toward the face, hovering just a few inches away. There's no heat, no vibration, just an immense stillness, like standing before a truth you didn't know you had the strength to face. And in that moment, you understand that these faces are not records of people who once passed through. They are echoes, impressions, residue of self-reflection carved not by chisel, but by emotion, left behind in the stone by those who dared to pause and witness their own presence without fear. You let your hand rest lightly against the surface, and though nothing shifts outwardly, you feel a soft tightening in your chest, a knot loosening, a breath you didn't know you were holding finally releasing. Not everything you carry belongs to now. Not every thought you think is still yours, and not every face you've worn has been forgotten. You lower your hand slowly and step back. Your face, if it is yours, remains where it is, unchanged. But the connection lingers, a faint imprint of something both deeply personal and entirely universal. You turn away from the wall, heart steady, thoughts softer. The faces remain still and silent, but you no longer feel alone among them. You are part of the mountain now, and it is part of you. After the mountain wall fades behind you and the faces return to stillness, the trail ahead narrows once more. Only this time, it doesn't continue in stone. Instead, the ground flattens into a low ridge of translucent material that stretches forward into the night like a ribbon of frozen light. You pause at its edge, unsure whether to call it a road, a bridge, or something else entirely. It doesn't sit atop the earth like a built path. It appears to rise just slightly above it, hovering, shimmering faintly in the pale glow of the moon above. You crouch down and run your hand over its surface. It's cool but not cold, smooth but not slick. Beneath your fingers, faint threads of light pulse slowly, tiny veins of color that dance between violet, soft gold, and a deep, serene blue. The material is not quite glass, not quite crystal, but it feels alive. When you step onto it, your foot doesn't sink, but there is a give, a soft, breath-like response, as if the path itself is aware of your arrival. With your second step, the path lights up beneath you, the section behind dimming, as if encouraging you forward, guiding rather than pushing. You walk slowly at first, unsure whether this fragile surface will support your weight for long. But it does. In fact, with every step, you feel more secure, more steady, as though the act of moving is what makes the path stronger. To your sides, the terrain falls away into gentle valleys bathed in silver light, and above you, the sky remains impossibly clear. The moon hanging so low and bright, it feels like you could reach it with your hands. The path itself curves slightly upward, then down again, as if flowing through the air rather than resting on anything solid. In some places, it narrows into a beam no wider than your shoulders, and in others, it flattens into a platform that feels like a resting point for thought. You stop briefly at one such platform, and as your feet come to stillness, something within the path responds again. Not light this time, but memory. A sensation pulses up through your legs, into your spine, and settles behind your eyes. Not sharp or sudden, but slow and rising, like mist warming under morning sun. You are not being shown images. You are being allowed to remember, not from this place, but from yourself. You feel the echo of a time when your heart beat faster at wonder instead of fear. You feel the memory of laughter, real, full, unrestrained, so distant and yet instantly familiar, as if it had been sitting in a hidden drawer inside you, waiting to be opened without judgment. You even feel sorrow, but not the kind that drags you down, the kind that reminds you of what mattered, what still matters, the kind that says, you cared once, and that meant something. You take a breath, deeper than before, and continue walking. The path narrows again, winding between two raised formations of moonstone that arch above like cathedral walls carved from starlight. Here, the crystals beneath your feet shift tone, becoming clearer, sharper in glow, and with each step, the color changes slightly, reacting not to your pace, but to your focus. You think of someone you miss, and the light turns a soft amber. You remember something you once gave up on, and the color pulses a deeper indigo. You release a thought you've been holding too tightly, and the glow softens into pale rose. You realize now the path is not just reflecting where you're going, it is revealing who you are while walking it. Every step is a conversation. Every moment of awareness leaves a signature, and perhaps most profoundly, the path never repeats itself. You could walk this again 1,000 times, and it would never look the same, because you would never be the same. As you near the end of the visible trail, the crystals widen again into a circular platform, the largest yet. At its center stands a low pedestal made of the same translucent material, and resting atop it, without label or inscription, is a single crystal orb, no larger than your palm. You approach it slowly, hands open, and as you near, the orb begins to glow, not brightly, not urgently, but gently, like a heart welcoming home a long-lost rhythm. You do not touch it. You do not need to. The connection has already been made, and when you step away, the path behind you fades slightly, not disappearing, but dimming, like the last echo of a voice that has finished saying what it needed to say. You look ahead, and the ground returns to dust and stone, but something in your chest still glows. The crystal path is behind you, but it has not left you. As the glow of the crystal path fades behind you, and your feet return once more to the cool, grainy dust of the valley floor. The air seems to settle around you in a quieter rhythm, like breath held in reverence. The terrain ahead shifts again, wider, flatter, darker. Gone are the shimmering lights and soft curves of energy. In their place stand low, uneven formations of stone scattered across the plain like forgotten monuments. At first, they appear to be boulders, natural outcroppings of the mountain, broken free and frozen in place by time. But as you move deeper into the field, something begins to change in your perception. The formations are too patterned to be accidental, too placed. Each one occupies its own space as if it were once carefully positioned, or perhaps allowed to grow. You crouch beside one of the stones, running your fingers gently along its edge. Its surface is worn and warm, as though it has absorbed the heat of 1,000 moons. But there's something beneath the surface, an energy, faint but undeniable. You close your eyes and rest your palm fully on it, and you feel it, not movement, but pulse, a slow, steady rhythm, too deep to be mechanical and too soft to be heartbeat, but unquestionably alive. You rise slowly and begin to walk among the others. The further you go, the more detailed the stones become. One has ridges that resemble ribs, curved and layered like a shell surrounding something fragile. Another has a smooth depression in its center, the shape of a back curled inward, as though the stone once held breath and chose not to release it. Some are small and dense, others long and flat, like bodies stretched beneath centuries of sleep. They do not rise, they do not speak, they do not glow, but they are not dead. They are waiting. You move slowly now, your steps instinctively softer, as though entering a room full of dreaming souls and not wanting to disturb the peace that holds them still. The silence here is different from earlier. It's not empty, it's protective, as if the entire valley has lowered its voice out of respect for what rests beneath the surface. You pause beside one of the largest forms, its shape unmistakably humanoid, head tilted slightly to one side, arms crossed over the chest, legs tucked inward. The stone is nearly covered in dust, but the lines remain, an ancient outline of rest. Without fully deciding to, you sit beside it, not close enough to touch, but near enough to listen. And though you hear nothing with your ears, your mind begins to quiet. Thoughts slow. Breath deepens. You become aware of your heartbeat again, not in your chest, but in your legs, your spine, your fingertips. This place does not demand anything from you. It simply invites stillness, a subtle permission to exist without effort, to rest, as the beings beneath the stone rest. And as you remain seated, your awareness expands, not outward, but downward. You sense the presence beneath your feet, not just this one being, but many, layers and layers of sleepers stretching beneath the earth, deeper than light can reach, deeper than thought can follow. spoken to you before you had a voice of your own. Minutes pass, or maybe hours. Time doesn't flow normally here. Instead, it folds inward, bending around your focus. And in that space, you feel something shift inside you, like a lock gently turning, not in a door, but in your chest. And you know, without seeing or hearing anything, that the doorway has noticed. You stand up slowly, not rushing, not hesitating. And as you face the space where the door stands, the air within its frame begins to ripple, not violently, but like calm water touched by wind. The shimmer deepens into a glow, and then that glow pulls backward, revealing a passage, not a hallway, not a tunnel, but an opening into something entirely unknown. There are no symbols to guide you, no signs to reassure you, but none are needed. Because the opening before you doesn't offer answers. It offers passage to a place where answers are no longer the goal. You take one step forward, and the sensation is unlike anything before. It's not walking into a room or even stepping through space. It feels like walking into a part of yourself that has always existed, but you've never dared to visit. And as you pass through the invisible frame, the air around you changes again. The silence deepens, but not in a way that isolates. Instead, it comforts. It's the silence of understanding, of readiness, of finally coming face to face with what lies beyond comprehension, and trusting that you don't need to know everything to move forward. As you cross through the threshold of the door that had no handle, your surroundings shift so gradually that it feels as though your very perception is being rewritten. There is no sense of arrival, only a soft unraveling of boundaries. And then, as if time itself sighs in relief, you find yourself standing in a chamber unlike any you've entered before. It doesn't open outward, but folds inward, as though space has gently cradled a secret within its deepest layer. The air here is impossibly still, not because there is no motion, but because even motion has chosen to rest. The ceiling is not solid, not formed of stone or wood or any material your senses can define. It is a velvet canvas of darkness, stretching beyond any architecture and studded with stars that do not twinkle but breathe, their pulses slow and synchronized, like the heartbeat of the universe in slumber. The floor beneath your feet is soft, not like grass or moss, but like memory, yielding just enough to make you feel held, yet substantial enough to remind you that you are still somewhere. A pale golden mist floats just above the surface, glowing faintly with no source, wrapping around your ankles like a forgotten lullaby that never needed words. In the center of the room, a wide circular platform rises slightly, not through mechanics or design, but through intention alone. And as you walk toward it, your steps grow quieter, your heartbeat slower, your thoughts softer. You feel your mind begin to mimic the environment, not silencing, but surrendering. Thoughts still pass through, but none of them demand attention. They drift like embers that know they have already burned enough. You lie down without knowing why, and the platform accepts you completely. Its surface curves gently beneath your back, matching your shape not as a mold, but as if it always knew you'd arrive. Above you, the stars hang impossibly close now, not far off lights in the sky, but living presences just above your breath. Some of them shift slightly, not to move, but to greet you, not with sound or vision, but with feeling. And then you begin to sense it. This is where the stars come to rest. This is where their journey pauses, not ends, but regenerates. You feel one of them reaching toward you, not physically, but in energy. It doesn't speak. It simply offers a warmth that isn't heat, a light that isn't brightness, a comfort that isn't touch. You don't need to reach back because in this place, response happens without effort. It connects with you, shares something ancient and wordless, a memory of when your soul was first formed, not in a body, but in vibration. You lie there for what feels like hours, or perhaps just seconds. Time bends differently here. It doesn't tick forward, but ripples outward, like light over water, echoing back from the edges of eternity. There are no dreams because you are not asleep, but you're also not awake in any conventional sense. You exist in the same way the stars exist here, resting, remembering, readying for what comes next. Far above you, one star dims slightly, not as if it is fading, but as if it has finished its sleep and is preparing to rise again. You watch as its glow folds inward, becoming more concentrated, more radiant, and then it lifts, gently, deliberately, disappearing into the fabric of the universe. Its place remains, but the light is gone, carried somewhere new. You understand now, even the stars need pause. Even the light requires stillness. Even purpose can rest. And as you lie in the heart of this sanctuary, you feel yourself becoming part of the rhythm, not separate from it, not observing it, but sinking into it. Your breathing slows until it matches the pulse of the stars above. Your thoughts fall silent until they resemble the gentle drift of cosmic dust. And your awareness remains, not focused, but softened, not diminished, but diffused. And in that state, you don't forget who you are. You remember who you were before names, before places, before time. You were this, and this was you. As you rise from the celestial cradle where the stars themselves had chosen to sleep, your body feels lighter, not because gravity has changed, but because something heavy inside you has quietly let go. You begin walking once more, instinctively drawn to an archway on the far side of the chamber. It doesn't shine or call attention to itself. It simply waits, as if it has been waiting since the first moment you chose to wander. Crossing its threshold feels like walking through mist that has memory. The air here is denser, not difficult to breathe, but so full of presence that every inhale feels like drawing in an untold story. The path ahead is narrow, its walls smooth and curved, almost like the inside of a shell. But instead of echoing footsteps, what returns to you are voices, faint at first, not from outside, but from within. They're your thoughts, yes, but not in the way you think them. These are reflections of words you've said, emotions you've buried, beliefs you've held without question. They come back not as criticism, but as curiosity, a gentle inquiry from the space itself, not asking for explanation, only recognition. You walk further and the sounds shift. You begin to hear laughter, not loud or disruptive, but soft and layered. It's yours from moments you'd nearly forgotten. Laughter around a fire, in a quiet room, under the breath of someone you trusted, and alongside it, sorrow, whispered apologies that never reached the surface, disappointment that settled quietly into your bones without ever announcing its arrival. The walls don't speak to you, they remember for you. They carry the echoes not just of your voice, but of your existence. Every time you hesitated before acting, every time you looked away instead of speaking your truth, every moment you chose silence, and every moment silence was chosen for you. They play here not to accuse, but to release. Because the only way forward through this corridor is to hear it all, not to judge it, not to fix it, just to let it be witnessed. A sudden swell of sound rises, a name, not yours, but one you've held close, perhaps for too long, a person you lost, or who lost you. Their voice reaches you in a whisper that carries no blame, only memory. You pause, your hand touching the cool curve of the wall, as if touching the echo itself might bring them closer. But instead, it brings you closer to the version of yourself that still carries that connection, unresolved but unbroken. You keep walking, and now the corridor bends slightly, not physically but emotionally. The echoes shift again. Now they are of choices you haven't yet made, conversations you're afraid to have, dreams you've delayed so long that they almost stopped dreaming themselves. But here they are, alive in sound, waiting patiently for you to listen. At one point, the corridor expands, not into a room, but into a wider awareness. And for a moment, the echoes fall away, replaced by silence so deep it feels like falling inward. And in that stillness, you hear something new. Not memory, not fear, not longing, but your voice, steady, Clear, present. You don't remember saying it, but it speaks anyway. I'm still here. And that one sentence, return to you now, becomes a signal. The walls begin to shimmer faintly, not with light, but with recognition. They no longer echo, they align, because now you've heard yourself. Not the voice shaped by roles or doubt, but the one beneath it all. And as you step forward, the corridor begins to narrow once more until it leads to an opening at the end. A soft radiance spilling outward from the next world. You take a final look over your shoulder, expecting the echoes to follow, but they don't. They've said what they came to say, and now they rest, just like the stars, and just like you will again, once the next journey begins. As you step beyond the corridor, where your echoes had finally found rest, a gentle draft of cool, still air brushes against your skin. Not from outside, but from something vast that lives just ahead. You take one step forward and realize you're no longer standing in a passage, but on the threshold of a place that seems to exist both within and beyond reality. Before you stretches a colossal chamber that defies architecture. Its dimensions are fluid, expanding and contracting with your breath. Towering shelves rise in spirals that vanish into the glowing mist above, each shelf filled with books of varying sizes, shapes, and textures. But none bear titles. Their covers are blank, their spines undefined, and yet you feel their weight, not physical, but existential. You step onto the floor, which is not stone or wood, but a smooth surface of dark glass that reflects not your image, but the flickering possibility of each decision you've never made. You walk forward slowly, almost reverently, the sound of your footsteps replaced by a soft hum. Not mechanical, but like the distant murmuring of thoughts that haven't yet been thought. To your left, you pass a tall, narrow shelf filled with thin journals that emit a faint golden glow from within their pages. As you move closer, one of them shivers slightly, as if it recognizes your proximity. You reach out, hesitant at first, but then allow your fingertips to graze its surface. And instantly, your mind is flooded with a vision, you standing in a city you've never visited, working a job you never applied for, beside a person you've never met, but who in that moment feels like someone you've always known. You let go and the image fades. The journal returns to stillness, and you understand these books do not record your past. They hold the shape of what might have been, or still could be. You continue walking, and the space around you rearranges, not physically, but perceptually. A massive archway appears ahead, etched not in stone, but in starlight. Beyond it lies a second chamber, wider, quieter, and lined with larger tomes bound in silver thread. You feel something pull at your attention, like gravity laced with memory, and you follow it. Inside, there's a solitary table made of obsidian and crystal, upon which rests a single book, slightly open, pages fluttering in a breeze that does not exist. The book is unwritten, but not empty. Its pages are filled with motion, words forming and fading like thoughts that almost become decisions. You lean over it, and the pages begin to settle. They show you a path, one where you made a choice long ago, a choice you buried beneath logic, convenience, or fear. And in that version, you see how different everything became. Not better or worse, just different. You're not a stranger in that story, but you are someone you barely recognize. And as you study that life, a strange ache blooms within you. The ache of almost. You sit down at the table, not to read, but to feel. And as you rest your hand upon the book, it reacts. A new page turns, this one blank, but warm to the touch. It's not asking for you to write in it. It's simply offering you awareness that even here, within the astral layers of forgotten time and fractured dreams, your unwritten paths still live, still wait, still call. You rise, knowing this place is not meant to be stayed in, but to be remembered. And as you turn back toward the path ahead, the library begins to shimmer, not fading, but folding itself away, like a thought placed gently back into the corner of your mind, because you will return to this place, perhaps not in this journey, but one day. As you leave behind the fading shimmer of the library, a soft pulse begins to vibrate beneath your feet, subtle at first, like the distant echo of your own heartbeat, then gradually building into a rhythm that matches the cadence of your breath. Ahead of you, carved not into stone but into the very structure of space itself, a staircase spirals downward. Though it doesn't truly descend in the physical sense, but rather folds downward through layers of perception. What lies ahead is not beneath you, but within you. The steps are translucent, as if made from compressed beams of light, glowing faintly with an inner radiance that shifts in color with each step you take. One moment they shine with a soft lavender hue, the next a golden warmth like dawn breaking just beyond memory. And as you begin to descend, the space around you responds. The air thickens, not in resistance, but in presence. With every downward motion, the world becomes quieter. But it's not the silence of emptiness. It's the hush of understanding. You pause after the first dozen steps, not because you're tired, but because something about this descent feels alive. The light from each stair doesn't just illuminate the path, it shows you something, not externally, but inwardly. With each footfall, a memory surfaces, not like a flashback, but as a quiet visitor. You see yourself in a moment where you hesitated, not out of fear, but because your intuition whispered caution. And though you followed it, you never truly understood why, until now. Another step, another scene. This time, a version of you stands in front of someone you once loved. But in this memory, you say something different, something braver, something truer. You watch the shift ripple outward from those words, not dramatically, but profoundly. And you realize that these stairs are not just passages. They are reflections cast in motion. The deeper you go, the more the light around you begins to change. Not brighter, not darker, just wiser, as though the illumination itself has learned to speak the language of your soul. The space narrows slightly, not to restrict you, but to focus you. The further you descend, the less noise there is. Not because you are leaving sound behind, but because your mind is no longer scattering thoughts like sparks. Instead, it listens. One particular stair glows differently, not with light, but with shadow. You hesitate, unsure, but something in you understands. This is a memory you've avoided. As you step onto it, the space around you folds gently, and you're suddenly present in a version of your past you never revisited. Not because it hurt, but because you believed it wasn't important. But now, seeing it again, you realize how one small word, one look, one breath changed the arc of a connection forever. And more than that, you forgive yourself for not noticing it before. The descent continues, the spiral tightening like the inside of a seashell carved from time. And then something shifts. The stairs stop glowing outwardly. Now they glow inward, not shining but inviting. You realize you're no longer descending into light, but through it, becoming part of it, shedding the illusion that there was ever a separation between the path and the one walking it. And in this recognition, your pace slows to a graceful drift, your steps less about travel, more about transformation. You reach the final stair, not marked, not numbered, not announced, but felt. A warm stillness beneath your feet, as if the universe itself is holding you in quiet applause. The spiral opens into a chamber where the light has no source. It simply is. And you stand in it not as an observer, but as a participant, a contributor to its brilliance. And in that moment, you realize the light was never outside you. It was simply waiting for you to come down far enough to look in and see it waiting all along. As you step away from the light-drenched spiral, something in the air feels different, not in temperature or pressure, but in its attention, as if the space you've entered doesn't simply exist around you, but with you. It doesn't welcome or observe. It listens, silently, intently. And within that stillness, you begin to feel it. the whisper. It doesn't arrive like a voice. It doesn't cut through the silence. It emerges with the silence, a presence that carries no sound, but every meaning, not words but weight. And as you begin walking, unsure whether you're following it or it's following you, you realize it's not in front of you or behind you, it's within you. The ground beneath your feet is no longer defined. Each step lands not on surface, but on sensation. You feel as though you're walking on breath, on thought, on the faintest thread between what is real and what is remembered. And the world around you reflects that, shifting, not in shape, but in familiarity. This isn't a new place, it's a forgotten one. And in that forgotten space, the whisper begins to form. It doesn't say your name because it never forgot it. It doesn't ask where you've been because it's always been there. It simply begins to pulse, a rhythm without sound, an echo without origin. You pause, not because you're afraid, but because something in you recognizes this is not something to chase. It's something to receive. You close your eyes and you feel the whisper become clearer. It tells you everything you needed to know, not through language, but through knowing. It reminds you of the night you chose to begin again, of the moment you decided to stay when it would have been easier to leave, of the time you forgave someone who never asked for it. It brings you back to the laughter that healed you, the silence that made you feel safe, the version of yourself that you thought you lost. And in that moment, you realize something. This whisper, this constant presence, has been with you your entire life, through every breath you took while uncertain, through every dream you abandoned but never truly let go of, through every night you thought you were alone. It never left, because it wasn't something separate from you. It was you, the deepest, most quiet part of you, the part that watched without judgment, the part that waited without demanding, the part that whispered, "You're still here and you're enough." You open your eyes and you are no longer walking. You're simply standing still, and the space around you, once shifting, once unknown, now feels like home, because you've come full circle, and that whisper will not fade as you move forward. It will walk beside you, live within you, speak for you when you forget how, and in the final breath before your journey ends, it will be the last thing you hear and the first thing you remember. You are no longer falling, floating, or drifting. You are still completely, finally, still. Yet this stillness is not emptiness. It is presence, a full, grounded awareness that gently wraps around your spirit like the softest silk woven from silence and memory. The world around you has quieted, but not because it has vanished. It has transformed into something that waits, something that listens. You find yourself standing on a soft surface that feels neither solid nor fluid, perhaps something in between. Beneath your feet, a shimmer spreads outward with every breath you take. Not a glow, but a pulse, as if the space beneath you is alive and responding only to you. All around, the sky no longer holds stars, but whispers of them, the remnants of light left behind by dreams that have ended, and dreams that are only just beginning. You begin to walk, not out of necessity, but out of understanding. Each step you take feels effortless, guided by something deeper than decision. And as you move, the space ahead begins to open, not into a room, not into a tunnel, but into a moment where all of your journey returns to meet you, not as memories, but as companions. From the corners of your awareness, the figures begin to emerge, not physical, but fully real. The glowing sea, the singing trees, the echoing corridors, the sleeping stars, the mirror that breathed, the light that descended like thought. They're all here, standing beside you, walking with you, becoming you. You are not alone. You have never been alone. And you realize now that the entire journey was not about reaching this place, but about remembering that it has always been inside you. The horizon shimmers, not because it is distant, but because it is possibility. And you begin to feel the weight of your physical body calling, not pulling you back, but inviting you to return with more than you left with. You pause, not out of resistance, but out of reverence, because you know that once you step through this final veil, the language of this realm, of dreams and symbols, of silence and vibration, will slowly begin to fade from your waking memory, but not from your being. You look to the space ahead and realize there is no threshold, only breath. And that is what you must carry with you now. Breath that remembers the stillness, breath that carries the sound of stars, breath that speaks in the voice of the astral. You close your eyes one last time, letting everything settle, letting the colors dissolve gently into one another. Violet melting into gold, silver falling into blue, light folding itself into the warmth of your chest. You feel your fingers, not in motion, but in readiness. You sense your breath, no longer deep and distant, but steady and soft. And you feel it, the pull of waking, the gentle nudge from the world you left hours ago, the distant echo of your own heartbeat, aligning again with time, space, gravity. But this time, you return not as the same self. You return as the one who walked with stars, the one who listened to silent wails, the one who floated through forgotten light and found a whisper that never left. And as your consciousness slowly rises toward the surface of awareness, you let your body soften further, welcoming sleep's final layer, where the journey can settle, imprint, and begin to echo within. Your last breath in this world of wonder is not a goodbye. It is a promise that you will return here again, that you will carry this calm, this depth, this astral knowing back with you, not as a dreamer, but as the dream itself. So when your eyes finally open, hours from now, in the quiet morning light, something in you will remember, and the next time the stars begin to whisper, you'll know exactly where to find them inside you, waiting always.